allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome. This meeting is being recorded and televised by Chelmsford Telemedia. If there's anyone else here who's recording or planning to record, would you please so indicate at this time? Hi, Molly. Okay, first thing on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is the approval of minutes from our last meeting, November 4th. Does anyone have any comments or corrections? I think there is one misspelling of Ms. Thorin's name.
Oh.
Here we go. Page 6, third paragraph down. It's just a transposition of the N and the E. Ms. Thorne. And I know you did that just to make sure we were checking. That was clever. That was good. Does anyone else have anything? Okay. All right. Seeing no other adjustments to be made, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda that includes the minutes of November 4th, 2014, as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Abstain. He wasn't here.
Good point. Thank you. Now it's time for our student representative report. Monse and Owen are here tonight. What have you got for us?
All right, so I'll kick it off. I'm going to start with sports because I'm a big sports fan myself. Recently, girls soccer lost a heartbreaker in the Division I North final against Lincoln Sudbury. It was 1-0. It was really close. I was there. It was out in Lynn at a neutral venue. And they had previously defeated Acton Boxborough in the semifinals, who were the number 1 seed in all of the North Division. So, and I know they're losing a lot of seniors at the end of the season, but we're looking for similar results next season. I know that they can pull through. Quinn Cooney in cross country won the all-state meet for out of everyone. It's amazing. His time is unreal. I think it was 15 minutes. I forget.
15:33.
15:33. That's amazing for a 5K. And then Quinn, he has committed to Dartmouth for college for running. And then I know that recently Rachel Bossy and Jack Campsmith have also done that for with University of New Hampshire and Merrimack College, respectively. And I know that we're all looking forward to the big Thanksgiving football game. Sadly, I'm never home for it because I'm always away. But I was home once, and it was great. And I know everyone's excited for that. And then we have Spirit Week. So classes have begun constructing their spirit walls, which are the big 3D designs that use a theme to display Chelmsford beating Billerica at the football game. I saw actually after school today a lot of students in Mr. Richter's room, and then students over near the tech wing. They were started planning. They had all their supplies out. And then the Spirit Days have been announced recently. I know we were just talking about that. There's Color Wars, which is the seniors' day. There's Dress Up Day, Pajama Day, College Apparel Day. So those are all really fun. We're looking forward to that. And Spirit Week starting this Thursday. And then, of course, there's Pep Rally, which everyone is looking forward to. That's one of the most sought-out activities of the whole year. Highly appreciated by students. And then homecoming is this Tuesday, the dance, which actually I've been getting positive feedback from a lot of students, and I think that maybe more than usual might be going this year. I've heard a lot of different people saying that they'll be going to it. The tickets are on sale at lunches, $10 per ticket. And then the Powder Puff football game is this Monday. I know that the girls have been working hard out at the turf in the cold weather, practicing for that. And I'll definitely go and watch that game. That's going to be fun. Today I had a meeting with Spanish Honor Society, and we've begun the process of collecting. We'll be going around different plus blocks collecting school supplies, either new or gently used, that we will be collecting and sending off to an organization in Tennessee, and then they'll be sending it out to countries in Africa. I believe there's Tanzania, and I can't remember the other two. There's 3 countries, but that's going to be really fun. And then we've also been collecting baked goods to send off to local food pantries for Thanksgiving. And then tomorrow, the mentors meet with their mentees again. We'll be talking more about the different words in the acronym PRIDE. And other than that, that's about all I have. I'll turn it over to Monsi.
Hi everyone. Last Thursday, the Chelmsford Science Organization attended their monthly meet, and now we have moved up from 9th to 3rd in the West Suburban Science League, so that's a big deal for us. Last year we placed 2nd at the end of the year, so this year we're hoping for 1st. We have a solid team. This past Saturday, senior district auditions were held at North Andover High School. The Student Council successfully hosted the annual blood drive, which took place on the 7th. This Thursday, kids that are taking music classes at Chelmsford High School, they will be attending a field trip, and they will be listening to the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and especially renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma. So I'm really excited about that. I'm going to write a program review about that. November 20th to 22nd, a theater guild will present their fall plays, and this year it is going to be Audience and the Miss Firecracker contest. And I believe tickets are $5. And speaking of plays, this year's spring musical will be Mary Poppins, so I'm excited about that.
That'll be cool.
So you guys should all come attend. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Good news?
Good news, we're going to turn it right over to Anne Marie.
Okay, this good news comes from the White House. Dr. Tiana was selected as by the U.S. Department of Education as one of 100 top school leaders from across America to participate in the first ever National Connected Superintendent Summit tomorrow at the White House. I'm reading right from the thing because I like this part. Superintendent Tiana is among exemplary school superintendents who will be recognized for their leadership in helping transition their districts to digital learning. This unique conference will bring together officials from throughout America to share with one another and the United States Department of Ed promising approaches to using technology in their school districts. So I've been asked by some people, like, what were the criteria for the becoming selected, and it's based on President Obama's Connect Ed initiative that came out in 2013. There's 3 criteria. The first is connectivity. So how he describes it is that the Connect Ed initiative will within 5 years connect 99% of America's students to next generation broadband and high-speed wireless in their schools, thus providing students and teachers access to robust digital learning environments. We've done a lot of work with that here in Chelmsford. We've completely reconfigured our network. We have Comcast dedicated fiber, 550 Mbps. I mean, that's been a very, one of the top initiatives in my department. The second tenet is using data to support student achievement. Making digital tools available for assessments of student learning and helping teachers understand each student's strengths and weaknesses. And of course, we address that by adding the educational data coordinator into my office, who creates charts, graphs, all variety of different data for department coordinators, principals, teachers. And the third tenet was the president has been encouraging private sector innovation. We've taken advantage of the free software that we've got from received from Connected. Some of them titles were Maya 3D animation software and Autodesk for the Project Lead the Way program, 2 formerly very expensive pieces of software that are now free. So in short, Chelmsford was chosen as a model school district using technology to create personal learning environments where technology will play an increasingly crucial role in the future. Congratulations, Dr. Tiana. We're so proud of you.
And that's the important thing to know, is that this is a district award. This is a town award. I mean, obviously, we could not keep moving forward without the help of capital and the town, and the support and the direction of the committee, and obviously, leaders like Anne Marie and our curriculum leaders in the district. And so I'll be honored to go down there and represent Chelmsford.
Excellent.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Thank you.
Okay, now is a time for public comments. Is there anyone here who'd like to address the committee at this time? When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, hello. Excuse me, my name's Jennifer Salmon, and I live at 3 Marinal. Can you hear me? Sorry. Ave, and I am a teacher at the Chelmsford Public Schools. On Thursday, our teachers' union met, and we took a vote of no confidence. There were 200-plus teachers there, out of all the teachers in the district, and I spoke there. And I felt it was only fair that I came here to speak. So I'm going to read to you what I have prepared. I'm going to quote from a memo that was given to us on November 14th, 2014, to the staff from Dr. Tiano. That being said, in hindsight, I did not dedicate the time necessary to overseeing our business practices in order to keep our school improvements moving forward. For that flaw in my practice, and for where we are now as a district and town, I truly could not be more sorry. You refer to your negligence of budgetary matters as a flaw in your practice. The word flaw means a feature that mars the perfection of something. I purchased a refrigerator once with a flaw in it that was substantially reduced. When my husband and I recently painted our family room, there were flaws in the walls. In each of these instances, the word flaw refers to something that makes something imperfect, but in no way interferes with its basic function or appearance. Because of your flaw, there are $878,340 of invoices remaining unpaid in FY 2014. Because of your flaw, there are 3 valuable administrators no longer working for Chelmsford Public Schools. Because of your flaw, there is a tech position which will not be filled. Because of your flaw, we still have a projected shortfall for FY 15 of $588,751. I am not sure the use of the word flaw is appropriate in the view of the magnitude of the overwhelmingly negative impact to the educational system of the town of Chelmsford. In view of the horrific ramifications to our educational system resulting from your flaw, as a resident of the town of Chelmsford, I would argue this is an example of a breach of your contractual obligations, a far more serious charge than having a flaw in your practice. As a teacher employed by the Chelmsford Public Schools, I raise concerns about the accuracy of your statements you made to the public. On October 28, 2014, during a public input session, you said, and I quote, "Currently, all of our PSPs, as of the new contract, aides, all have subs. That has not been reduced at all." Later, you added, "We do provide coverage and support for folks across buildings." Contrary to what you said, on October 29th, the following school day, the daily attendance sheet showed there was no sub for an aide in our building. A teacher also did not have a substitute. As a result, a one-on-one aide was pulled from her assignment, which violates a student's IEP, to cover this teacher. This information was then reported to the school committee, and as of Monday, November 3rd, the names of absent teachers and substitutes was no longer listed on our daily attendance. In the 6 years I have taught at Parker, the daily attendance has always included both teachers and students. A day after this information proving a sub was not provided, we have a new procedure, which eliminates this data that shows teacher absences and subs provided. This situation, rather coincidental I may add, raises concerns about the accuracy and truthfulness of the statements made. As a teacher and taxpayer in this town, these matters are of deep concern to me. My husband and I specifically chose to move to Chelmsford so our children would benefit from the schools I attended as a child. The same schools that helped shape me who I am today as a mother, teacher, and member of this community. As I read the newspapers, social media conversations, and watch various episodes of our town meetings, I am horrified to see the anger, despair, sense of hopelessness, and frustration expressed by our town population. This situation was created by your flaw, something which certainly could have been avoided or at least minimized. Your flaw or breach of contractual obligations had turned this town upside down. A flaw in the refrigerator I purchased did not affect how it was functioned. The flaws in the walls of our family room are barely noticeable. Your flaw has created somewhat of a tsunami in our educational system. Despite the dismissive remarks and inappropriate comments made by school committee member Mr. Nick DeSilvio, I stand before you as a proud member of the Chelmsford Teachers Union to express to you my dissatisfaction as a teacher and member of this community. Your performance as the superintendent of the Chelmsford Public Schools. The teachers, the students, the parents, and the people of this community deserve transparency, truthfulness, and excellence in the performance of all their leaders. Anything less is unacceptable. We may tolerate a simple flaw in one's character or work performance. We cannot and should never tolerate negligence or incompetence.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the committee at this time? Hi.
Hi, my name is Zachary Davidson. I'm the treasurer for the class of 2015. So every 3 years, the student activity accounts need to be audited. This audit is to make sure that we're accounting for all the money coming in and out of the accounts, making sure that nothing's getting lost in the mix or going where it shouldn't. This year the audit was done by Powers & Sullivan, a CPA firm based in Wakefield, Mass., and it was charged to about $6,000 this year. The cost of the audit was paid from two sources. Half of it, about $3,000, came from the principal's discretionary account, and the other half, again about $3,000, was split up and paid collectively by all the other student activity accounts. On September 26th, $70 was taken out of a significant On September 26th, $70 was taken out of a significant number of activities accounts. This money was taken from the accounts without the students' permission and without notifying them. I confirmed with Mr. Rigney, the chair, that this is against the rules governing how funds in students' activity accounts may be used. The interest generated by student activity accounts may be used to pay for things like the audit, but the money in the accounts itself can only be used by those clubs and by those students. It's the first time something like this has happened. And that is, it's the first time money has been withdrawn for this purpose. For some clubs that operate on a smaller budget, this can be almost a third of the money in their account. And I think that our school system should be accountable to the students that it's educating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Davidson, we normally don't respond to input from the community at this point. However, I would anticipate that we will address your remarks later this evening. If you're comfortable with us addressing them now, that's fine. Normally, we try to have a little bit of a break so that it doesn't turn into a back and forth situation. I very much appreciate you coming forward and bringing this information to us. If it's okay with you, I think we do have some information on that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. We became aware of this situation, and as you said, there was a check actually written out from the student activity account to pay for the audit fees, which amounted to $6,000. That check, however, was voided, and the school committee voted at a recent school committee meeting that the entire $6,000 would be paid from the general fund of the school committee's, of the school department's budget. So therefore, that $6,000 should not be deducted from the student activities account.
So when would the people who are overseeing the accounts expect to see that $70 returned, would you guess?
I was not aware of the $70. I will look into that and get back to the school committee about that.
So we'll take that as an action item, and I'd very much appreciate it if like I said, if you don't see that kind of restored in a timely manner, we'd like to hear about it again. Thank you very much. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to address the committee at this time? Okay. Then we will move right along. The first item under new business is an update on the food services department. I see Miss April Lasky here. Dr. Tiano.
We welcome back April Lasky. She's in her third year as our food service director. Obviously, as you know, we do split her time with Bill Ricker Public Schools, and we're grateful for that. April has come before the committee on a yearly basis sometimes more on that, and to give you an update where we are with our food service program. I know it's of interest to the committee, and on short notice, April was here, so thank you, April. Appreciate it.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So what I wanted to do is I just wanted to give an overview of where we are so far this year and some of the things that we've been focusing on as a department. So far this year, we're really focusing on professional development for our team, as we've talked about, as I've brought to the committee over the last couple of years. So far this year, we've done some sessions with John Starker Institute, which is from Framingham State University. They've done some allergy awareness and training, as well as we will be doing customer service training in December. These sessions are approximately 2 hours, and they count towards professional development that is needed in school nutrition to maintain certification in the future if folks are looking to get their certification for School Nutrition Association. All of the trainings and professional developments that we plan count towards these certifications. We do ServSafe certification 1 to 2 times a year, depending on the need of our staff. Here in the town of Chelmsford, it is required that all food service employees have ServSafe certificates, so we offer that on a timely manner when necessary. We did have a class for 4 people in October, and all of those folks successfully passed the class and the exam. Each month, we have a company that's called SFS that come out to our districts. They supply our chemical cleaning products as well as an audit of our facilities. Part of that audit is to do a 10-minute staff training. Those staff trainings count as professional development, and it's a different topic every month. Some of them are specific to something that I might see that we need, taking temperatures, production records, things like that. But it's 10 different topics in a month, and it's quick 10-minute trainings that our staff receives with this service. Again, as part of our focus on professional development for our team. This year, for the School Nutrition Association had their annual conference at the DCU Center in October. Joanne Nabalski and I were both able to attend that event, as well as participate in some sessions, and of course the annual food show, which is where we go and we find all of our ideas and products for the following year. As part of School Nutrition Association and members, there are usually 3 to 4 chapter meetings in the area, and we attend those as well. And those topics vary from time to time. So the good news that we have for our school nutrition department is we have received some grants this year. The first grant is called the DoD grant, and it's Department of Defense, and it is run through the USDA. As a member of the Massachusetts Commodity Advisory Committee, I am able to find out about these options early and take advantage of them early. So we were able to do so this year. We received $6,200 this year in fresh produce. That produce will be served. We've already started it. We saved those funds for the winter months when produce is very expensive, and we are serving those items at the high school. When possible, they offer local produce. Lately, we've been receiving apples and pears that are locally grown, and we receive those items once a week, and we are serving them at the high school. So that's a great benefit for us, and these funds will last approximately 7 or 8 weeks, which is a huge benefit for us, as you all know, and I think I've talked about this in the past. If you're in the supermarket lately, you're seeing the cost of produce rise dramatically, and so we're able to take advantage of that with this grant. The grant that we received, and I believe it was in May, we will be using later in the school year, is for the Harrington Elementary School. We will be offering a new breakfast program. I do want to say that we did start a breakfast program in the spring of last year for all of the before-school programs, and that has been successful. We've been working with community ed on that. So our focus will be to begin starting breakfast programs for students after the bell. Mr. LaCava has been wonderful, great supporter in developing this program, and we're looking to start it after the holidays. And we have met with the teachers, and they were wonderful with their support, so we're excited for that. We found out actually just yesterday that we received a second grant at Chelmsford High School, again for the breakfast program. Both of these grants are through the New England Dairy Council. And at the high school, what we're looking to do is find a way to bring breakfast back to the Learning Commons. As we all recall, when I arrived 2.5 years ago, that was part of a program that we had to no longer offer because of the new regulations. So we're hoping that we can take our breakfast from the cafeteria on the go with a cart and other equipment that we'll be able to purchase through this grant. So when we got that news yesterday, you can well imagine that Katie Sims, Stephanie Quinn, and I were very excited for that news. There is also another grant that we have in the works. We're hoping to hear from that in the next few weeks, and I will certainly let the committee know. For the last 2.5 years, I suppose, I have been talking about the lunch program and the items that we're offering. Every year, what we try to do is offer new menu items. The committee has certainly talked to me about elementary school. We focus a lot in elementary in terms of what we can offer and supplement for preferred meals. We successfully launched a lunch salad with preferred meals, and we were the first in the New England area to do so. I worked diligently with them, and it was very successful. Our lunch counts are certainly high on those days, and we have continued to offer that item with some enhancements for our program. We are able to create some of our own lunches, bagel pizzas, and Power Pack lunches that we are creating on our own through Chelmsford School Nutrition and not purchasing those items through preferred meals. So we are continuing to do what we can to offer new items in the elementary schools. In the middle schools, we have offered Meatless Mondays. It's a new item. We're trying. It's a sort of national focus of trying to offer meatless items. I'll let you know how that's going. We've just started it this year, and we started with some safe items such as macaroni and cheese and grilled cheese. We're going to ease them into that one. It's certainly new. But we've done other items such as roasted chicken and what we're calling the pasta pot, which is pasta that comes in a little container, something fun for the students to eat, just a little different way of serving it. And again, at the high school, we are doing different types of pizza and grill items, and we are partnering with some of our local and national vendors in terms of other options that we'll be able to serve as we continue to increase lunch choices at the high school this year. Some of the projects that we've completed over the summer and so far this year, the walk-in freezer and refrigerators at both the Parker and the high school. I just have to say thank you. It has absolutely changed the way we are being able to do business in both of those schools. To have state-of-the-art equipment is a gift that we will want to say thank you for a very long time. It's been, as any construction project is, it was challenging, and literally up until the day before service started, we were loading food back into those coolers because they were ready, but we were thrilled. I have been working with Anne-Marie and her team in terms of updating our Meal Magic, making sure the database is clean, and matching X2 as we are going into our third year. And that has been wonderful to see that program become more enhanced and work towards matching X2 the best that it's ever has. I've spoken about direct certification in the past. Direct certification is through the state, where we can match and upload students directly for free eligible meals. And we have had the most successful implementation with that this year, again, by working with Anne-Marie and her team. We will be doing another match after Thanksgiving holiday. We are required to do up to 3. My plan is to try to do more in the lines of 5 or 6 every time we upload and match, and we're able to offer students free meals, both breakfast and lunch. So we will continue to work with that. As you can see, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but Anne-Marie again, this is, I think, a plug for Anne-Marie more than school nutrition tonight. Anne-Marie has been wonderful in helping me with design of a new logo and new rebranding. We've come a long way in the last 2.5 years, as you all know, and I have a wonderful team that is working really hard. And we're at the place where we really need to be referred to as school nutrition. We are a nutrition team, and we're part of a wonderful program here in Chelmsford Public Schools, and we're very proud of it. So we're taking that new logo, and we're really looking to rebrand it. We're working hard on updating websites and menus and things like that, and I really, there's a big difference this year, and we're very proud of that. Again, Anne-Marie helped with a promo video, so if you haven't visited my webpage and seen the promo video that we've done for school nutrition, you should really check it out. It's pretty cool. It involves some students, some fun food items, and some of my team working very hard. And again, I did talk about partnerships with vendors. We're working with a lot of vendors such as New England Dairy Council and Sal's Pizza to help develop new menu items, getting some equipment in, and other ways to improve our program. So to talk a little bit about our program, we've talked over the last 2.5 years of short and long-term goals. So in the beginning, when I got here, it was about meeting the regulations. We were able to do that in year one. Last year, we talked a lot about what we were going to do with equipment, and we've met some of those, the major problems, which were the walk-ins, and that's been wonderful. We are, I have presented to the committee last year some of the needs that we have in equipment, and we will continue to need that. But what we're trying to do is work around those challenges, both for equipment as well as staffing needs, to sort of continue on the momentum that we're in. We continue with budget discussions with Mr. Antonelli in terms of long-term goals for the kitchen and how we will be able to look at improvements in the future. Our staffing levels at this point, we are looking to hire some employees. We've lost a few employees, and we have just placed a few, not full-time, long-term employees, but we are looking for substitute cafeteria workers as we've gone through some transition of our staffing. And as we do so, we do look at the needs for each school to determine how many hours that employees should be working, et cetera. So that's something that we've been doing ongoing and will continue to do so throughout this school year. So how are we doing? The big question that I like to answer every year, and every October I get that opportunity, and I thank you for that. So as you can see, when I started after the first 2 months of school, and we had a real hard time moving from the previous program to meeting the new regulations, in October of 2012, we were at 24.2% participation. I can happily tell you that in October of 2014, we had 32.31% participation. That is an amazing leap in 2 years. In school nutrition, that is something that we all dream about, and we should all be very happy here in Chelmsford that we have been able to accomplish so much in the 2.5 years that we've been here and that we've been working on it. It's a tremendous team effort. My team is working diligently to make sure that the program continues to improve and increase every day, week, and month. We continue to offer programs such as Tasted Thursdays at the middle and high school level. As we talked about, we have new menu items that we continue to introduce each month, and we participate in as often as we can in school events. For example, at the Parker Middle School, they had a Disco Friday on Halloween, and how that came about, I'm not quite sure, but with the help of a principal and, help of the principal and a good sense of humor, they all had a good time at lunch that day. And again, I think that there are some pictures on the school's website. So we continue to enjoy what we're doing during the day. We've talked about this in the past. The expenses are high in terms of food cost and labor cost because the cost of food is high. What I do want to make sure that the committee understands is we do aggressively bid all of our products for grocery and supplies through a tech collaborative. And I can tell you that with comparison to other bids across the state, we are very competitively priced, and I'm very happy with those results. However, as again I've spoken about in the past, some of the challenges that we face is storage issues. So we are limited in the way we're allowed to receive deliveries. We are limited in the ability to split up a delivery because we don't have a driver or a vehicle to do so. So the way some systems might work in other nutrition programs, we are limited in that ability here in Chelmsford. So we work around that by choosing our menu items wisely, staffing needs, and delivery needs as best as we can. We continue to look at labor, as I talked about, as we know that our program does pay for the benefits of our staffing, and that is paid for through our revolving fund. Preferred Meals we continue to work with them in our elementary school. At this point, it looks like, we will be doing the same in the coming years unless there's a major change. That is probably where we will be in the next year. And then we will continue to monitor our expenses, especially in the food and supplies, as well as labor expenses, which are our big expenses. And I am already working on bids for next school year for grocery supplies, et cetera, with our collaborative. And I think at this point that's it. If there's any questions from the committee, certainly would be happy to answer them.
Thoughts?
One, what stopped the breakfast at the high school and learning commons? Was it legislation? Was it just a building decision?
It was the items that were being sold.
Okay, so they didn't fit on the list?
No.
Okay. And in your opinion, are the less than new machines and equipment at the other schools, are there any desperate needs at those buildings? Like Parker and the high school had before we did the replacements there?
For,
Refrigerators, any equipment?
the short answer is yes.
And
There's
in
every
order
school.
in order of priorities, what would you say they are?
I'm not, there's the list. I
You'd
think the
provided that
priority
with
is
us.
every school.
Last year, yeah.
But, I
Right,
mean,
I-
there was no refrigerator or freezer at Parker?
We have some elementary schools that do not have walk-in refrigerators
Okay,
that we are
that's what
working
I'm
with
asking.
regions. We have
Okay.
elementary schools that don't have ovens that we're borrowing from
That's what I'm
Preferred.
looking for.
In order for, I wouldn't be able to give you a priority list by school. I think there's a need in every school. I
Okay.
mean, even at the high school in the Parker, there are still immediate needs. Even the walk-ins are wonderful, but there's a priority at every school.
Okay.
Would you say that the list that you provided last year is still basically the list of what we're looking for?
Yes, except the obvious, the two walk-ins.
The two that were,
yes.
yeah,
Those
right.
were the two most important
Right.
ones.
Nothing has changed since,
Okay.
except for those walk-in projects.
Al?
What's a power pack lunch?
A Power Pack lunch is, well, it's a bagel, a pretzel, a yogurt, fruit, vegetable, and a milk. And it comes in a fun little bag with riddles and pictures and things on it for the students to entertain themselves at lunch.
I don't have kids in the district anyway, not anymore, so I'm a little behind the times, but isn't there a cafe or something at the high school now? Or was it something like that introduced?
We introduced a grill at the high school, so we reopened the grill line.
And but if they eat from that, that doesn't count toward the total lunch?
Oh, it does, yes.
It does? Oh,
Absolutely,
okay.
yes. Yes, our focus will always be on reimbursable meals.
Good.
Mhm.
You answered pretty much most of the questions that I would have asked, but then I did talk to you down at the MASC conference, so I've had a lot of questions answered there, too. Have we compared the prices of what we charge for meals with other districts to see where we fall?
So, yes and no. That will probably be a decision that we will have to talk about in a few months when we look at, there's a USDA guideline that says you have to meet a certain price per lunch in order to meet the reimbursable needs. And I believe it's called equity in school lunch pricing. So what we will do is we'll work on that as our future budget plans to determine if we'll have to go up in price next year. I can't answer that question right now without going through that. And basically what it is it's an average of all lunches sold, an average price, and do you meet the qualifications the USDA puts together. So that's something that we would have to look at for the first half of this year in order to determine what we'll do for next year.
Have there been any modifications in the nutritional requirements since we started? There
It's
was
only
one
go-
about salt, right?
It's only going to get more difficult.
Oh, great.
Yeah, salt is in just the beginning phases of a 10-year
It
plan.
is. However, school nutrition is up for reauthorization next year, and with, there maybe there's hope. We'll see. But it's only going to get more difficult.
You had mentioned that the participation is about 32%. What's expected for participation in a community like ours? I mean, we're not an inner city, so where there's a large, sometimes when you're in an inner city, there's a large participation because a lot of folks are on the lunch
Sure.
program, Community like Chelmsford, what would be expected?
I have to say, we're probably right around average. And the reason why, it's hard for me to compare because half of our program is preferred meals. Half of it is
Right.
we're doing our own. So we're really unique in this area. I would say we're probably only a little bit under what local areas are. If I were to, off the top of my head, think of some of the surrounding communities, it probably anywhere between 40 and 55 or 60%. But everybody's free and reduced participation is different. But we are unique because of our elementary school meals are so different than our middle and high school meals. So I don't know how to compare that.
So, but anyone that has the preferred meals in this case, they're still part of your number, right?
Oh, yes,
Percentage.
absolutely, yes.
So are you implying that because of the preferred meals, it's lower, or?
I think maybe it is, yes, although I can see our participation increasing because of the preferred meals has changed their program, and because of the demand that we have given them, we're looking for different types of meals from them, so we can see that our participation is increasing. When districts have a company such as Preferred Meals, it's oftentimes a management company. So it's a different type of program, a different type of business. So I wouldn't really know how to compare that as opposed to comparing to a complete self-op district.
Like canteen, when you talk about managed meal?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I got. Nice job.
Thanks.
Eligibility for the breakfast program, are there any requirements? The one that you're talking about putting in at Harrington?
No, come eat breakfast
Okay.
every day.
Come eat breakfast. So you're gonna, they're finding time in the classroom schedule?
It's a wonderful school with a wonderful staff.
That's cool.
Yes. We're excited.
I have some, a question, I guess. This is on our action item list. This is a question from Claire Janot. So feel free to jump in if there's something that I run afoul of. But the question was about some of the unpaid bills from FY14. Some of them were food-related invoices.
Sure.
The question was, where were those bills? And while I understand an investigation is ongoing, perhaps it would be appropriate if you could just give us an overview of how that billing
Sure.
cycle works. You get something from, if you go out and put a bid in through a collaborative, then you get the food, but you also get the invoice, and then what?
So not all of our invoices come directly with our shipment. For example, Gorelick milk. So Gorelick will send a delivery with a delivery slip. We won't get those invoices for up to 2 weeks later. And depending on when they come through the mail cycle and get to our office, oftentimes June milk bills are not in until after the 4th of July. Happens everywhere.
And the same is true of the September bills wouldn't be in until October.
Right. So
So there's a known delay with at least some of the bills, but
But there is a purchase order assigned to that bill when you
yes.
place the order.
Yes. So depending on
It should be encumbered.
It should be encumbered and
Right.
it should be paid. However, they're not. They wouldn't be processed until
Right.
we
Well,
return
that's-
back. And so the other piece of that puzzle is in school nutrition, we don't work. We work 200 days a year. We're not here in July and August, so we're not seeing those invoices, and we're not processing them until we come back in August or September when we input for our first warrant. We send in our bills.
so they would,
It happens. It absolutely happens. So
Gorelick shouldn't be surprised if their
No.
June bill doesn't get paid
Absolutely
until
not.
September.
absolutely not. Happens
Okay.
district to district,
Yeah.
all across.
Okay, look, these are the things we're
Oh, no.
trying to learn a little bit about.
Absolutely.
Okay, so,
But we did talk about this, so sorry to interrupt, but
Okay.
to look at the encumbrances and how we do that for the future. So I think that, again, my assumption is that when I process those bills, when my office put those bills in, we didn't separate them when we put them all together with our end of August or September bills, and they all went together in one Gorelick pack, for example, as opposed to separating
why.
those out. And we did not separate those out.
just answered my question.
Okay, so
They probably got mixed in
They
with the
they were all put
regular
together.
September bills.
Absolutely.
And lo
right,
and
because they're
behold,
not necessarily segregated.
No, and we
You
did.
come in, they're all in the office.
and
We
we-
put them together for delivery to the
Right, and I
office
believe
here.
that when we brought up, it was in September when we brought up our
Yeah.
first, sort of, we call it our batch of bills we bring up.
Yeah,
And so I know that I did not separate them, nor did my team. So we brought up Gorelick, as we always do, we bring them
Yeah.
up by,
Can we somehow set up, I think, to prevent future issues? I think, Frank, maybe there's a procedure that we can put in place where with folks like Gorelick, because there aren't a lot of them. There's probably a handful, maybe a half dozen at most, that last pack slip that comes in, the last one, for June, that an invoice comes with the PAC slip, just in
So
June.
It won't
I can't do
happen.
it.
It won't happen. So what we need to look at is, do we set up a person from my team come in July? It won't be here. There will be,
just won't even show
it will
up.
always happen because of the way the billing system
You know what,
works.
as long as Gorelick knows it.
Yeah, but we still have an issue about when the bill is being paid. Even though there's a purchase order assigned to it, okay, once the books close on or around the 15th of July, you have an issue, potentially. Right? Am I correct? Am I missing something here?
Well, if there's a purchase order, then the bill can be paid, that's right. The bill would be,
As long as it's
the expense would be
Right.
encumbered, which
Yeah.
would mean
With
that
that
it
money
could be
that's
paid.
brought forward,
Right.
so
Right.
they can-
So what we can look
Just
at
wasn't
is,
maybe.
if the committee is looking, we can come up with a plan for next year's, someone coming in July in processing invoices. That would be in the encumbered purchase orders.
Well, I guess the other thing would be to have them, instead of going to your office, to come to the business office.
Yeah, but they have to say, how does he know to pay it?
Right.
They have to
Yeah,
say,
you need
yep,
to check
signing
it
off
off
on
and
them.
and
They
say
have to
that you
check it off.
received.
You
If
want
he
the
wants to make
source.
sure the
Right.
materials are.
Service, right,
Yeah,
the
no,
service
that's
is rendered.
right,
If he just starts getting bills, someone has to sign off on the receivers. I know that's what we do at our office. So,
So how many of them are there? I mean, you did it in plural, we just happen to know about the milk this year.
8
How many-
buildings, so it's going to be all the, it's.
Is it just the milk, or are there other vendors that you deal with that do the same thing?
There are other vendors that do the same thing. Bread, milk, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, bread, milk, and sometimes some commodity deliveries.
Produce stuff.
However, we wouldn't get commodity that late, but absolutely bread and milk would happen.
how about produce, because they are,
No produce, it wouldn't
So
happen
it's-
that way, no.
no.
Not in June, maybe earlier in the year, but not in June, the end of the year. So we can come up with a plan for next year in terms of.
well, if it's encumbered, then it's not a problem, because
Right.
you already have it in your books, and technically
already has
it's
a PO.
covered. Right, there's a PO, and it's been encumbered, then there shouldn't be an issue,
Right.
even if the bill doesn't come in till September. Right? Or
Right.
am I
No, that's-
missing something?
No, that's exactly right. We just need to make, and if, yeah, we just need to know what it is.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need to invite you back sooner rather than later as we go through the budget, to talk about the food services, budget. I think it's one of those areas that things have been a little unclear, but the trend looks good. But the goal is to get to a place where it's a self-sustaining operation.
Yeah, we also, I think, need to tie into what Barbara requested in regards to prioritizing by school. Well, it can't be by school. We need to prioritize what's needed. The school will be the default, whatever's.
Do you
Regarding the
have,
capital.
have you got plans on capital
There's nothing
right
on there.
now?
There's not that much on there
Okay.
at all.
Not for next year.
All right, well, we had
definitely not for
talked
next year.
about reestablishing a capital plan. So that needs to, yeah,
That's why.
those are the things that need to go on from the food service department,
Right.
that sort of thing. Okay, and staffing-wise, you're looking at a level, number of employees when you say you're looking to bring some new folks in?
So we're looking at a level number of employees now. However, if we're looking to make major adjustments or improvements
Then
to
we'd
the
need-
program, then we need to look at, it's not just capital as we've talked about in the
Right.
past. It's capital as well as the expense of more employees or more hours for employees.
Right.
We're at
So the
max at this point.
the FTEs might increase without the number of employees
Right.
increasing, but
But then
I
we
assume
have,
some of them are non-benefited at this point.
most of my staff are
Most of them.
non-benefit now,
Okay.
so
So that's something that needs to be taken into account as
Yes.
well. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And you know what, just, I looked at those participation rates, yeah, a 33% increase in 2 years. That's amazing.
I have a great team.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, April.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, we will continue on with our review of the finances of the district. We have a financial update. I'll turn it over to Dr. Tiano to lay it out.
Well, essentially, as we had discussed previously, depending on the outcome last night of town meeting, part of our discussion would have been going forward, should we have gotten to Article 4 of fall town meeting. As you folks know, In the special town meeting, the money was appropriated for us to pay the unpaid bills, and the business office is going through to pay those bills immediately. And so those vendors will be made whole in the next warrant. So that's been, and we're grateful for that to the town. In terms of going forward, we're looking toward town meeting on Thursday. While that's going on, that's a short-term piece. One of the things that Frank and I have been discussing is to set up a meeting with our finance subcommittee to look at the processes going into budgeting for FY16. And that has been something that we've discussed, and obviously Frank has some experience in this, as well as John Sullivan, who's provided some nice guidance in terms of what other districts have done successfully in terms of putting together their budgets. As we're getting into that season, where we need to get on this as we're developing it and making sure that we have the processes in place. So I would be reaching out to our subcommittee to put that in place, to come up with a plan. The idea would be, but open for discussion, is to come back on the 4th with an outline, concrete dates for this committee to look at and to feel comfortable with in terms of putting together a budgeting plan going forward. The other,
I'm sorry, and this is, we've been talking about this since probably the middle of last year.
Right.
In regards to, going forward, at least for as long as I've been on the committee, we get the dollar value, and then we back into the number. We just can't continue going in that manner. It's just, obviously, it came to a head, at the end of last year. We need to put our budget together and then hold to that budget, versus we get a number, we make the budget work around that number as best we can, and at the end of the year, we cross our fingers and hope and pray that we execute. We need to put a plan together for a level service budget. Level service.
And that will be, in terms of going back and starting at a zero-based budget. And we talked about this, I believe, at the last meeting, that to operate Chelmsford Public Schools as we currently do is going to be more expensive than what we've been moving on in terms of our operating budget. So I'm looking forward to that piece, to see our actual costs, and as we look at our revolving funds that are recurring and so forth. So we will be able to put that together. Again, there are models out there, obviously, and we have, we have some good folks working on that as we put that together. But to involve the committee and bring it back to you folks so we go forward. And we'll be talking about that at our next meeting. The other piece as well, and Frank, I'll turn it over to you, that you have an invoice to share with the committee in
Yes.
terms of processes and controls. I'll let you introduce that.
Okay, fine. And before I introduce that, I just wanted to mention to the committee that the warrant for the unpaid bills should be ready by tomorrow at 10 o'clock. If you want to come in and sign off on that, I'd appreciate it, so that we can get those over to the town accountant and get them paid by this Friday. So you have in your package some invoices that total approximately $53,000. Those invoices were for asbestos removal at the Westlands Elementary School, and they were actually paid from the town facilities budget for asbestos removal. I'm recommending to the school committee that those invoices instead be paid out of the child care revolving account, which has, as you know, a balance of approximately $1 million. I think that this type of expense is legitimate when you look at the requirements of revolving accounts. And so I would recommend that the committee take a vote on that, so that an adjusting journal entry could be made on the school's ledgers.
Would anybody like to have a discussion about that?
I guess we need to get, I guess, your opinion on that is pretty solid. I mean, I don't think we have to go to the limit of finding out if it's acceptable or not by.
No, I think that's Frank's role here.
Okay.
Is to tell us what's acceptable.
Listen, I'm getting a little gun shy at this
Yeah,
point.
no, I understand.
It's acceptable because that school is being used for childcare, and this is
Not only
a
that,
building maintenance
work.
program that is related to fees that you have collected, so it's a legitimate expense.
So if it was another one of our buildings, there wouldn't be any other accounts that we'd be pulling from, because sometimes we have like the civic activities, and we've used that in order to do upgrades, or we've added to the buildings where the money was generated.
That's a good point. So, for example, your use of, I call it use of school facility rental account. So you're taking money in for that, and you can use that account to spruce up the building, and you have been doing that. But in this case, if the work was done at another school, I would not be here saying that it's a legitimate expense for this child care revolving fund.
It's 31,375, right? I mean, I just.
No, the total is 53,494.60. There are 3 invoices there that you should have received in your package.
So there's one, I'm trying to see. Oh, okay.
Right, there's one for 31,700. 31,700.
And then
There's one for 12,211.
And then I added all 3 of those, or that's the total 9582?
Exactly.
Okay, all right, that comes out to 50, okay, 53,494.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Well, seeing that there isn't any further discussion, I'll make a motion that the Chelmsford School Committee approve the payment of $53,494.60 in expenses for the removal of asbestos at the Westland School. This amount would be paid from the child care revolving account, and they were originally paid from the town facilities budget this year, and I would imagine we're reimbursing their budget with that money.
If I may, what will happen is that entry that was charged to the town facilities budget will just be reversed out, and it will be charged to the child care revolving
All right.
account.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I guess a procedural question subsequent to that. Is it reasonable to have journal entries provided to the committee as part of the consent agenda?
I think certainly a journal entry of this magnitude is something that I would not be comfortable doing myself unless the school committee was aware of it. I think that there has been some discussion about reviewing your policies, and that would be a good time to have a healthy discussion about how you want to handle transfers and journal entries.
Okay, so we'll put that off until we have that. Until
We can
have that.
assign a threshold number, some
Good.
threshold.
Right.
Yeah.
value.
Right.
And that's how other districts do it,
Right.
in terms of doing every journal entry.
Right.
Okay, any other comments on what you've heard here? Anything you wanna?
I don't know, do you expect more as you go through different things? Have you seen anything else that might come under the same type of action by the school committee? Is that too
well,
general a question?
I know what you're getting at, and I will be bringing up at a future date expenses relating to the child care account for health insurance and for custodial expenses, which I think are also legitimate. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'd like to talk a little bit about the budgeting process. I'm not entirely comfortable with having a calendar put forward on December 4th. I think that's too slow.
Next week.
I think, yeah,
Week after next.
two
Two
weeks
weeks.
from now.
Sorry, 2 weeks.
It's December, and we won't have any time in on the FY16 budget yet. And I am concerned that we just don't have that many meetings. We need to do more than that. Looking at the breakdown provided by the auditor, I think if you look at the first 4 or 6 categories, I would expect they might be fairly predictable. Those would be school committee, superintendent, assistant superintendent, district-wide supplies, business and finance, and human resources. I wonder if it'd be possible to have a budget proposal for at least the first 4 and perhaps the first 6 of those, along with a calendar on December 4th.
I don't think that's reasonable. I think that that's too short of a time period. I'd like to review all of the staff, all of the salaries. It takes time sometimes to get background information for postage, dues, what have you. There's a procedure that you have to go through, and it's labor intensive. So I would recommend that we do meet as soon as possible. And rest assured, we are not going to just sit back and wait for the last minute. We'll be giving you information as soon as we can get it out.
Okay.
And we'd be happy to meet with your subcommittee.
Yeah, I think maybe the subcommittee can generate a lot of maybe information, or at least, the questions and some other structure too, to see exactly how.
I think it's really more of it's really more of a rough draft number for those different areas is really what we're looking for.
I would hope that after the questions from the subcommittee, that it would be a pretty much fine-tuned number that comes to the full committee for a.
Oh, no, when it comes to a full committee.
Absolutely. I think just taking a step back, just in terms of looking at the framework in which the committee provides for us, to be able to do that. In terms of, we've already started working on, looking at the salaries at the building level. Work's already in progress in those areas, so it's not like nothing has been done, but at the same time, as we start to generate, what that looks like, we need a model to move on, and that's why we wanted to work
Next
with.
week's not a full week. Next week you only got.
Right, but
There's a lot of not full weeks coming up real fast. We have a limited amount of time before winter break hits, and all of a sudden then we're into January, which is where we've traditionally begun the budgeting process, and I think one of the takeaways is that didn't work, that was too short a time frame to do the kind of review that we're talking about doing, and we need to extend the budget process. So either we have to have more meetings, and again, that doesn't necessarily help. I think, well, the point
have a meeting every day, but if you.
The point is, somebody's got to feed us
the
the
numbers.
information to discuss. And if it takes a couple of weeks to go through something, you can't just schedule a meeting for a week and say, get it done. That's why we need to get done as much as we can now, before we get into the holiday season. And if there's some low-hanging fruit, it might be good to try to get it ticked off.
See, 4 meetings this week
I
already.
want to listen to you on this, because we're into uncharted territory here, and I understand that as we kind of turn this ship a little bit, we're going to be trying to do some things that we haven't necessarily done. It'll be easier to do it the second time around than the first time around. No question
But
about
we
it.
can't rush into this.
We can't rush into it, but we cannot delay either.
No, I'm not saying to delay, but rushing and putting together information that is, let's use the word lackadaisy, it's just not.
I
it's just
agree.
not
It
gonna work for me.
doesn't do us any
You know what I
good.
mean? I'm not going to come back.
Bad information.
I'm not going to come back to this committee. Yeah, don't use that word. I'm not. I'm not going to come back with this committee.
Don't quote him at all.
I don't want to come back in to the committee and with the list, and I don't think Evelyn does either. To and say, yeah, it's close.
No,
We don't want to
don't
do
do
that,
that.
okay? We want to make sure that the number we present with working with the administration is a solid number.
Right.
And then we can discuss it and hack it. And
Right, if
wanna
we're
make sure
going
that
to
we
have
can
more
support it.
meetings.
Right.
Let's have them after we have the facts.
Right.
There's no sense having more meetings before and just sitting around doing it.
I don't mind meeting. I don't mind meeting even 3 days in a week on this issue. The
If
thing
there's
is, it's got to be
that much
worthwhile.
information to go through, right.
Right.
Well, we'll get to this later tonight, but there are districts who have each principal come in and do a presentation on their school. And when they do something like that, they might meet every night for a week to work through the schools. That would take longer than that for us. I'm just saying, if we want to go into a deep dive into the budget here, there are frameworks in place.
But what's the point of setting up a subcommittee if you're going to bring the principals in to sit down with the whole committee? It's a moot point.
Well,
that's what his job is.
And that's the piece that we were talking about too, right now where we are on November 18th, in terms of, we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation a few weeks ago because we were knee-deep in data and review and so forth. Where we are right now, and next year, our process may start October 1st.
There's no question it'll
And
start October 1st.
So before we start generating ideas here to say, well, we may have the principals in, this may happen and so forth, to be able to provide that structure, and then we'll move as quickly as possible, and we'll dedicate our time, whether that's at this meeting, smaller meetings, and we will also obviously be working with the administrative team at the building levels and at the department levels. So that's coming to this meeting. As you looked, I had assumed town meeting would be finished, last evening, that this was, we would have some more information, but now is the time where we've gone through our audits, we're working on the managerial piece, and now's the step-off logical piece to start looking at shaping what our framework of that budget looks like. And, maybe building it while we're implementing it.
We're gonna have to build it as we go along.
But there are good models out there.
Right, no doubt this is a first pass. I note, though, that many of those models out there are well into the budget season already.
Yes, they are.
And we're not a small district.
But
So-
we're not starting from nowhere, okay? In other words, we had a rough order magnitude budget, so we have a rough number. It's just not
Agreed,
correct.
and honestly,
Needs to
a
be
lot of the
fine-tuned.
work that's been done by the auditor already,
Correct.
and by Mr. Antonelli, it goes directly to how we're gonna build this
Right.
budget. So it certainly, I agree with you, we're not starting from a standstill. I am, however, concerned that we need to get this moving along.
Well, if the finance subcommittee meets maybe more often, or whatever it is, or each of the meetings, we have something very specific that we want to see achieved by the end of that meeting, we may be able to move it along faster, but through that finance subcommittee in terms of what the process may look like, and maybe the timeline, and bring it back to the main committee.
I think if you look at the report, if you look at the spreadsheet provided by the auditor, many of the categories, many of the large-scale categories, which more or less correspond to the lines that were given to us by the business manager, they're broken down into smaller lines. And I think that's an appropriate level of detail for what we would like to see as in an entire committee here, to approve. I think the role of the subcommittee would be to examine some of those sublines, and look into why is that one 14,000 and why is that one 28,000, so that when the numbers come to the full committee, a quick answer can be given, rather than having 5 people asking questions.
Right, but I would feel comfortable that when we come to the full committee, we have that detailed report to show everyone here.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
Al and yourself and Barbara are gonna sign off,
Absolutely.
you guys have the
Right.
right to see the detail.
Oh, yeah, no, everybody wants to see the detail. What I'm hoping is that if there are obvious questions, the subcommittee will pick them up first, so that,
Oh, sure.
so that the obvious answers can be prepared, rather than people having to respond on the fly. And you know what? If you guys dig down into a number and something doesn't make sense, then that means we gotta take a little bit deeper look at it, and that's a very useful.
And if you look
thing as
into
well.
all the line items and all the different categories, that we're not gonna find them all. I guarantee you, we're gonna come to this committee and Barbara's gonna have a question, you're gonna have a
Right.
question, Al's gonna have a question of just your own experiences that is not relevant to us. So there's gonna be opportunities.
But you
there.
guys can be the guides, I think, along the way.
As soon as we get the information, I think
I think
we're
it'll
both
go,
willing to, we're both willing to put in the time in the morning to come
Right.
in and bang it off and get it done, even if we come in at 7:30 in the morning and work for an hour and a half or so, and, Sorry.
I know.
Can I make a request that minutes are taken at those
Yeah.
meetings?
Sure. I think that'd be helpful.
Thanks. I mean,
Well, especially since they're gonna be-
policy meetings, the minutes are what we bring forward, basically.
Right.
You know, it's our discussion, that's what we're working on.
Yeah.
But we don't get to see the background of those.
Well, again, I think the expectation is that we're not going to be told, oh, you can't ask any questions.
Yeah.
It's already been decided.
Right.
But that if there's, that
Just to
maybe
understand the reason.
after they've gone through it, the entire thing gets brought to us, and perhaps Frank says, by the way, we were talking about this, and this is where this number comes from,
Listen,
because it
Right, but
generated
we're going to
questions.
post it, and I think if we post it, we should have some kind of a summary document of what it was we did discuss there.
Right.
And I know that someplace in all the paper I did have from the last time when we posted it, I do have some information from when we met the first time.
In my past experiences in budgets and in detail budgeting, because we really never went to detail budgeting at the level that we're going to now, is that I'm not putting the budget together.
Right,
They're putting the budget together.
right. You're
We'll go
reviewing
through
it.
line by line.
Well, I think
and
we're all
review
working,
every
we're all
single
working
one.
on it. It's going to be our,
Well, yeah,
collectively,
but-
it's our budget,
Yeah,
because
but they're the operations folks. They
Well, they're gonna find
determine
out
their needs.
the initial
We
number,
ask
then we have to
questions.
ask.
You know what I mean? Then we can ask questions about specific things, see if there's any trends, determine if that's enough. You know what I mean? Because there's going to be opportunities within every budget going forward where there's going to be, an example, full day K. You know, is there enough there? Where's the money coming from? Where, you
And
know
we're
what I mean?
going to have
Those-
to
right?
come up with ways to put that
Correct.
together.
Correct.
That makes sense to everybody, that makes sense to the people who have to do it, that makes sense to the people who have to sign off on it.
Right.
Yeah, look, I'm kind of throwing you guys out there, too.
Under the
because-
bus, that's what the
Not
word is.
under the bus, let's just say out into the water,
Okay.
okay?
We're
Because
in the bus.
Because
We're
this,
going on a
this
trip.
isn't something that's been done before, and so I very much appreciate both of your willingness to get up early and try to
The
come back
information is
and
there, that's
and
not a
work with
problem.
us.
I just don't want to go to a meeting and it's just a waste of time.
And the
It's
other,
not real.
not that anybody wants to do this either, but I mean, if we wanted a workshop and it was going to be something long, you can do it on a Saturday
I think that is a possibility.
with food. We haven't done that. We have never done it. I mean, if we're not going to do
We can-
business
we
as
can-
usual, I guess
let's see
we can really go outside the box.
Let's see what we need to do. If it comes to that, look, I like being here for a couple hours on every other Tuesday. Okay, that works pretty well with my schedule. If we
That
need
was
to,
the
if we
only
need
time
to
that
spend
we
more
spent-
time, I know. If we need to spend more
We're
time,
gonna
we'll
have to
figure out
spend
how to
more
spend
time.
more time.
We'll have to spend more time on it somewhere, because we're doing things different than we did before. So the process, just to get used to it, is just going to take us some time to do that. And as a result of all the stuff that's going on, we're going to have an awful lot more questions as far as what is on the line item. You know, what are the invoices going to be charged to this particular line item? And I have those questions as to where does everything get charged in order to have a clearer
Right, but
picture
that's
of that.
process. We're not talking about process, we're talking about budget.
In order to get to a budget number, we have to have a process, don't we?
Yeah, but
All right. Well, this is.
this is gonna
You
be
can see how
fun.
this is
Sounds
really
like it'll
fun.
be some
Be a fun
fascinating
subject.
subcommittee meetings. Let me ask one other thing that came up during April's presentation. She mentioned a couple of grants. What kind of information do we as a committee want to be getting about grants? If this is one of the things that we've talked about, that part of what happened in FY14 was you had the appropriated budget, and then you had the grants and the revolving accounts
Right.
that were not clearly associated with the appropriated budget. And having that kind of shadow budget behind helped create an environment where problems could flourish. And so what April put forward was relatively small numbers. I think two $4,000 grants.
And the $6,200 grant.
Some committees like to sign off on every single grant application that goes out from the district.
I don't want to slow down the process, though.
I think that's a very,
What-
that's an important consideration.
My recommendation in something like that is that you have your regular budget that goes to, let's say it's a $50 million budget, and then after that, you continue the budget, and this is where your grants, your revolving accounts, and everything flows in right after that.
Now, I think-
Because then at the very, very end, you have your 50 million plus everything else. And that's your budget.
And I think we've seen
what
that on an
experiences have you
annual
had, Frank?
basis.
mean, Frank, what kind of experiences have you had in your past?
Just what you said. So that there's a general fund, and then the grant budgets could be listed separately, so you'll have an idea of how many staff members are being projected in the
We had that
grants.
before.
And would
That was
you
a
see,
while
and
ago.
would you foresee doing that on an annual basis, or is this something that's part of the monthly review process? Because we have seen the grants, and we've seen the grants at least on an annual basis. That's for some years now been part of the budget presentation made to town meeting. But we did not track expenses against revolving accounts or against grants on a monthly basis. And one of the things that happened was then if we saw a negative number and we're told, well, that goes against revolving,
Okay,
we just kind of went, well, okay.
so what you want is on a monthly, On a monthly
I'm asking.
well,
forgot
from
you
what
guys.
right, but from what you said, what you're asking for, or what we would want, if it can be done, is that on a monthly basis, that if money was taken to offset an expenditure, it's noted someplace on the spreadsheet that X amount of money came from such and such revolving account that offset the expenditure by X amount of dollars.
Yeah, so if we have a $4,000
And this is
grant
what's
for
left.
breakfast at the high school, it should be carried as a $4,000 credit until
It's gone.
it's spent, right? But then it should be, we need to know when it gets spent, so we don't think it's just hanging there waiting to
But
cover any sort of
But-
problem.
But what's going to happen in a situation like that, as soon as that grant is received, they know that they're going to encumber it.
Then it should be shown as being encumbered.
And
right?
exactly, so that.
But you want
so
to know where
gonna-
it's going.
Right. I mean, am I missing something, Mike? I mean, isn't that how?
Oh, I think on a monthly basis, you should be receiving a report for your general fund expenses along with your grants and revolving accounts.
Okay.
And student activity accounts.
Yep. You know what, I'm gonna put that as an action item.
So can we just tentatively schedule a date, our first get-together? Are we able to do that? Evelyn, are you able to do that?
Yeah, I got a calendar here sitting here, but you and I can do that offline. We don't have to do it right
Okay.
now.
Well, I mean, obviously.
Well, we
it's
have
gonna-
people
It's
here.
going to be depend upon
You want to start the
when they're
first,
prepared.
the first week in December?
Or if this time next week.
If you're gonna bring a calendar to us on the 4th, I think you have to do it
Right.
before then. Right?
It's got to be the first week in December. I'm gone next week.
So that would be the
I'm gone
Monday
the
the
third,
3rd.
And I'm gone.
Well,
You're gone the
Gone.
first week in December?
I'm gone the 3rd and the 4th. I'll be
okay,
in Washington.
one thing about having
Well, we got
two-person,
the first and second.
two-person committees is that you could work via email, right?
Right, but I mean, we've got Monday and Tuesday, the first and the
Well,
second.
that is true.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we pick
that'll
one of
work.
those days.
Okay. Okay.
Monday, we're probably.
In the
works
morning.
best.
Yeah, because I have
Yeah, that's
a
fine.
variety of other
right,
conferences that come up.
that's-
Monday,
So
have your
we're
calendar?
thinking Monday?
Monday, the what day?
I think it's the 3rd.
December
right?
I don't know.
3rd.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 1st.
Monday,
Why are
December
we meeting on the
3rd.
4th then?
And
No,
you
I'm
said
sorry,
10:30 in the
On the
morning?
second.
Oh, okay.
The 2nd, that was my fault.
You want to meet at 10:30 in the
That'd be a
morning?
very, very quick meeting.
You're funny.
7:30, right? On Monday?
Yep.
It's
7:30 on Monday is fine.
All right, we'll get that later. All right,
I don't know how to use this thing, I'd be fine.
so that's our financial update, unless somebody else has questions or comments. Okay. Moving along, the next thing on the agenda is a review of the MASC-MASS conference. Just a chance for Evelyn and I to give a little bit of feedback on I guess, events of significance that occurred down there, or things that we saw or learned.
Well, first of all, there was the delegate assembly, so you had given me, the right to vote on things and all that stuff. All of them passed. There were some amendments that were made. They're on the website. The amendments didn't change the intent of the resolutions that were presented. This year, it was a lot livelier and a lot more discussion and went a lot longer than it did last year. So there was a lot more thoroughness that was there. The article that we co-sponsored on unfunded mandates and everything, there was a school committee person that did get up to try to amend it. Tracy Novick of Worcester, I think, was the author of that, and then we jumped on it with a few other cities and towns. And what we wanted was for the department to review all of the unfunded mandates and the testing and that, and the person just wanted to go forward with new ones. And she said she wouldn't support it, and I know that we wouldn't either, and I got up and I spoke about that also, and that amendment was defeated. So it went forward the way it should. And then they also had one of the resolutions dealt with the testing aspect of things. I think that was the last one that we had. And one of the amendments that came forward that did pass was that they were going to review particularly Common Core and Park. They specifically named it. The original resolution that came to the Resolutions Committee at the Board of Directors had a lot of language in that particular resolution. So and they took it all out because they didn't want to pinpoint or focus just on those two things because they're not necessarily together. You can do one, you can do the other. But that did pass. And but like I said, everything else did pass. There was a few amendments and lots of discussion. So that was the delegate assembly, and that was on Wednesday this year. Usually they've had it on Friday in the past, and it was very well attended. Lots of amendments and amendments to the amendments, and it was really interesting trying to have the president track all of that stuff while she was up there.
Let me
And then you
throw
can-
one. Yeah, I believe it was Wednesday afternoon. There was a discussion on financial challenges facing districts and unfunded mandates. In fact,
That was
I believe
Thursday.
was it Thursday?
Yes, 'cause I
And Evelyn
moderated
would
it.
know because she moderated it. There was, I think, for me, one of the big takeaways from that is that the McKinney-Vento transportation was deliberately unfunded this year by the state legislature. And it had just happened. The supplemental budget was passed. I think we were down there, the first week of November? They had just passed a supplemental budget a week before. When they passed the regular budget, they funded McKinney-Vento at 50%, with the expectation being that they would fund the other half of it in the supplemental budget, and they did not. They simply refused to do it.
There's some other kind of a bill that comes forward that would be specific.
I don't believe there's anything else that can come forward for the last fiscal year.
No, but
They just, for whatever reason, that message is not getting through to our legislators. They're just asking us to pick up this bill.
Well, they're asking us to pick up an
I'm
awful
a
lot of
little
bills, but that was
surprised.
one that you talked about. Other people brought up other unfunded mandates. And basically, the office, which is all lawyers, said that in order to look at any of the unfunded mandates, they have to have a letter coming from a school district challenging the lack of funding for whatever it is coming down from the state. They also talked about how the state kind of can finagle around having it, because they don't consider, or I should say even DESE, they don't consider some of what we consider unfunded mandates as unfunded mandates.
The thing
'Cause of the
about
way they deal with
McKinney-Vento
it.
is that the state, Suzanne Bump, whatever she is, the state auditor,
Yeah.
has ruled that it is an
Whatever she is.
unfunded mandate.
She did.
I mean, there doesn't seem to me to be much wiggle room. So what they were talking about was districts are looking at refusing to bus these kids back to their home districts, just, non-compliance with the law. And it's hard to see what other alternatives there are. I think this needs to be something that we talk about with our delegation again. I haven't taken the time to look out how they
It's been a
voted
while
on it,
since we've
but
talked to them.
this would have been an omnibus bill. I don't think they got to vote straight up or down not funding McKinney-Vento, but clearly that message is not getting through.
Well, we haven't met with them for a while, so maybe what we should be doing is taking a look at, especially with going forward the way we are with our budget and some of the past issues, maybe taking a look at more of what we consider unfunded mandates to see whether or not we want to pursue going forward with a letter to that particular office to see if they'll look into things.
I think there are some that have more of an impact on us than others. But my understanding is that there's a.
They
the
seem to be willing to
McKinney-Vento
listen to
is a
anything.
Noticeable knock. It's not going to make or break us, but good grief.
So that was the other thing on the Thursday. That
Yeah.
was of interest.
There was another session that you and I were both at. It must have been, Thursday morning when I came back? The finance one with.
No, Thursday morning, 8:45 was when I had
with-
this one, on
okay,
the
with,
unfunded. Later on was,
Bertolino and, not Gilbert, but the other guy. The guy from MASBO and the guy
Right.
from the MASC.
right. So it was David, somebody that was the
Bertolino.
the executive director of MASBO, and it was Jim Hardy that was the field director for the southeast section of the state through MASC. And they had put up a list of, what line items to look at. Utilities was one of them, special education. So, watch those. There are other ones that's out there. And they had an awful lot to say about, doing budgets and making sure that you tracked everything and what the responsibilities were in terms of us, line item, autonomy,
Yeah.
and a variety of pieces of process. I spoke to Jim afterwards, but it's really Mike Gilbert that's in charge of our particular division to come out and actually do workshops with us on that level. When we got to the division meeting, since I chair that, I did ask, and so people wanted to know more. That was one of the things that came up about how to do budgets, so that will be a topic coming up sooner than later as far as a division meeting, and we can have it here.
I think the biggest surprise for me out of this session was that they were suggesting that the school committee needed to authorize transfers across budget categories, but they seem to be saying that you should only set up 5 budget categories: utilities, special education, instruction, maintenance, and supplies, which is a far less detailed look than I think what we're going to want to do. So I'll put it out there that I think.
Oh, we actually have bikes.
People, well, I'm leaning away again, so I'll try to be better about that. I think we need to think about exactly where we'd like to draw those lines. It does seem to be a matter of negotiation. While Mass General Law allows the school committees that control, it doesn't really specify at what level that control is supposed to come in.
You could have
that
one.
comes from our policy.
As long as you have all the detail behind it, it doesn't matter. Just got to have the detail.
Well, the question is, when do we want to take a vote? What kind of a transfer ought to require a vote of the school committee to authorize? Because you could just say, hey, as long as you meet that
You say
final
what
number.
kind of vote? You're talking about a dollar value number?
No, no. In fact, there seems to be some case law against that having an arbitrary dollar value is not acceptable.
No, because they can play with.
Exactly.
people can
So
play with it.
we would
We're not
need to
doing that.
define, I think, in our policies, we'd have to say which categories, for example, again, if you go back and look at the auditor's spreadsheet, just looking at, there's 2 categories under business and finance. One is business office professional and business office clerical. There's 3 under human resources. One would be human resources professional salary, human resources substitutes coordinator salary, and human resources secretary salary. We could demand that we had to authorize a transfer within the human resources budget. But I think what MASC is saying is actually you would take those 2 things together. Probably they'd be under instruction, looking at their 5 categories, and you wouldn't vote at all. I would suggest that perhaps a reasonable thing would be to vote if something moved out of human resources and into the business and finance category. but not to worry about the transfers within the,
So you're
business
not
office
looking at,
itself.
going across, you're looking at if it's going, to
Right.
some other area. If we're going to get into more and more detail, maybe on a monthly basis, just to start, maybe for the first 3 months, to do it, to see if there's any money moved around and see what it is, and then that can determine how much detail we want or we don't want it, or whatever it is, to get back into doing that kind of an approval, which we haven't been doing.
My takeaway from the presentation was that this would be something we would have to define within policy.
Can I have your
Did we
opinion on
have to
this?
find a policy?
I would like to suggest that the school committee's policy committee schedule a meeting at which time the superintendent and I, or anyone else that the superintendent wants at that meeting, could discuss some possible scenarios for transfers, could be discussed at that committee meeting and then brought back to the full committee for their vote. Change the policy. I'm not sure how your policies work. Do you have a first reading, a second reading?
In fact, we recently did away with the second reading, so we can do it all in one night.
The one thing is, and Barbara said it a little while ago, we don't want to slow things down, okay? I know we have a responsibility, and we could put things in place that prevent, but the last thing we want to do is get so deep into this. Let's not go to the other extreme, okay, where we become a hindrance.
Well, I think you might draw a legitimate distinction between seeing the changes and having to vote the changes.
Correct. That's what I mean. I don't mind seeing it, but if we have to vote for every single change, as long as they're given to us in a timely manner, once a month, I think that would be best, versus if they're going to come back to us and they can't be making decisions on whatever without
Right.
our approval,
Right.
and we don't meet for a month and the meeting's delayed, or they got to wait a month. It just seems a little too much.
Policy 4106, financial reports and statements. If the amount changes on any of the line items of the budget that was approved for presentation to the spring town meeting, the business manager shall notify the Chelmsford School Committee for their approval and a formal approval vote of such changes on a quarterly basis. There will be a vote by the Chelmsford School Committee to approve any proposed line item changes at the presentation of the monthly report. So we already have it in our policy.
Right, but on a quarterly basis.
Nope. There will be a vote by the Chelmsford School Committee to approve any proposed line item changes at the presentation of the monthly report.
Okay. What does it
So
say?
what did this say right above
What does
that?
it say above that on the?
It says that the business manager shall notify the Chelmsford School Committee for their approval and a formal approval vote of such changes on a quarterly basis, and that deals with the line items on the presentation of the budget at town meeting.
They
We
both
have to go
contradict each
back.
other.
So we've got two policies.
We have two different policies in one paragraph, so they contradict.
But
each
the other
other.
piece is that, what I was trying to suggest is that if we have a monthly report and we know that there are on those major lines that we're dealing with, and there was money going from one line to another, then we can have a total of how much money was taken so that we know what money is left. So now you have the not to tell you, this is what I'm thinking, I know you know what you're doing, but you'd have the appropriated amount that we had voted, that the town meeting voted, that was proposed. Then what you do is, since we have a change, now you have the new number, because that amount going across now was put over here, from maybe line 1 to line 10, and then you see that this line decreased and this line increased and it's an even exchange, or however it is that you wanted to do it. Or 5 lines goes into, the 10th line. That's the way that you would look at it. And then when it is explained, you don't have to go by line item, making a motion that line item 1 is reduced by X amount, unless you want to. You could say, we've seen what the line items are, and we vote to approve what these changes are that's been presented to us at the February monthly report that's given by the business manager to us, or the superintendent, or whatever it is. And that way, then you see it changing. So you always keep the appropriated, the new number, and then whatever, the other information that we need that's in there.
And so you would just want to take a vote to approve?
I gotta see it. I gotta see where it is, and it has to be noted, where the lines are going.
So you know the 11 by 17 page, it needs to be 11 by 48.
But I was just going to say the approach that Evelyn's taking, as we get into this and we look at the practicality of it, I think that will drive the policy piece of it, because we have policies in place that weren't necessarily adhered to, or in some areas that they're confusing, or and so forth. So, I think when you figure out what you want in practicality, then maybe that'll be a policy change after that. I just thought.
So I'm not hearing much from the policy subcommittee right now, but I know, but I
Wait till all
figure
settles out.
you're
and decide
thinking
what you
about
wanna
it.
do, and we'll do it.
So also what I would suggest is that, since we're having this discussion, in policy 4106, it does talk about what was supposed to come to us on a monthly basis, as far as in order to get to that, because I only read the last paragraph. I mean, there is a whole lot more to that policy.
Well, because unfortunately, we did essentially get that. What was presented to town meeting was essentially what we saw on a monthly basis.
The numbers changed.
The numbers did change.
But we were not told where everything was moving. That's why I asked for it.
Well,
And when you take a look at from January up until June, the first several months of that year were okay, but when you began to get further into it, then those numbers in that first column changed, but we were never told where that money went. But when we were talked about on this particular policy, it talks about some stuff, and then, I think that in terms of what we were looking at all the time, it does describe it in here. But one of the other things pertinent to a brief discussion we had Thursday, last meeting, I think that some of these policies, as we go forward, the Finance Subcommittee can also take a look at them as we're discussing certain things and make recommendations, because it's not just the Policy Subcommittee that can make recommendations for changes in policy.
that's true.
Because you brought some forward as
I think
chair.
what you'd want to do is, that's right, what you'd want to do is make the recommendations in writing and supply them to the policy subcommittee so that they can review them and consider them, make sure that they're appropriate and consistent with other policies. And then they would bring them forward when they were satisfied with them to the committee as a whole for a vote.
Right, so
But I think just to give verbal direction can be
no.
confusing.
No, it has to be written down. And also when we're discussing about preparing a budget that is reality, like a zero-based budget, then you have policy 4102 that says that the Chelmsford School Committee may develop a needs budget in addition to a revenue-based budget, which we've done that in the past, way past all of the people sitting at this table but me. And sometimes you end up having the number change slightly from what the town manager wanted to give the school committee, so it was increased, realizing that what the impact would be on the school system. So in other words, like, say, for instance, we were given the 50 million, but we come in and we say, well, we need 55 million if we want to go in this direction. And then the town manager may say, well, I understand what your situation is, sit here, have the discussion, but I only can go to 53 million, which means we just got $3 million more in our budget. I'm not saying these are real numbers, but I mean, we did have some times where that number did change slightly in terms of percentages because of what the real numbers of the expenses coming forward showed that we needed more money than we were being given. You had to fight for your money.
Mm-hmm.
That was a while ago.
Okay.
But I'm just, because
No,
the
I think-
numbers
I think I see where
were
you're going with
not
that.
all accurate. But there's a lot of stuff, like I had given out the packet last week. If everybody reads the particular policies that I chose, there's a whole lot more of them. But that a lot of the things we've been talking about, they're already there. We may need to modify them. Because we also talked about having more than one public hearing, so that the public, the community would understand what our process is and where we were going, and be able to have, if they had any other questions, whether it was town meeting reps or parents or teachers or whatever. So in here it says a public hearing, so we know we're gonna change that one if we decide to have more.
But we just change shall to may, right?
No, you just have more than one. You know, yeah. So, I mean, there's a few things like that. I'm not to have the policy discussion now, but this relates to the budget in that we do have the things set up
Right.
here. That's why I had asked Frank that when he got through some of the stuff, if he could kind of glance at them, because we haven't looked at some of these for the last 2 years or more.
Yeah, those would be the recent ones. Okay, any other comments about the convention?
No, just that we will have more division meetings at different locations, and so that you know that we'll have finance ones. This special education, people wanted to know more about that, but more in terms of finances. So they're not all going to be in Chelmsford, so everybody will, and I'm going to set up a schedule so that you'll all know in case you wanted to attend. And then in the meantime, maybe, Mike, you and I should work on if we're going to bring in Mike Gilbert to do any kind of a workshop for us.
I will say at this point, what I'm thinking is that he would be subsequent to the MASBO review. Kind of on the same idea that.
Do we know when we're going to have that?
Well, that
Any
will follow,
time
that
frame?
will follow on to the
January?
auditor's report. Well, we think the auditor's report is gonna hit before Christmas, right?
That's my
We should
understanding.
see it around the beginning of December, so I think at that point, we'd reach out to MASBO and start to put things, we would reach out to them and start putting things together. I mean, how much work are they gonna do over the holidays? I don't know.
They wouldn't.
Right. You know, how much
Start
are,
January.
right, not to put it on them. But yeah, so that if we look for them to take a 4 or 6 week course as well to issue a report, then yeah, we're looking at that end of January? Something like that?
Yeah, I think you're speculating on what they're gonna do.
I am speculating. That's all I got, man.
You're putting dates on a calendar and it's irrelevant, because you don't, they may just come in here and do a cursory, yeah, this looks good, I'll do a report, and, you know, I mean, that kind of stuff. I don't know
I
if
don't
they
think
could.
that that's what they're
I'm
going to
not,
do.
you know what,
I'm not
I
saying,
didn't
I'm
get,
just
I'll
saying
say,
you don't
I
know
didn't
what
get
it
that
is.
vibe from Mr.
I didn't-
Bertolino.
yeah, I didn't speak to them,
either.
so.
And I didn't get it from the president of MASBO when I spoke to her, in that,
Right.
you know, she would be very interested to know what the process, you know, how things worked out too.
Okay. Next up on the agenda, it is time to set some spring dates.
It's nice that you consider January spring.
Roughly speaking. You have in your packet a list of dates between January and June of 2015.
Just for your information, folks, February vacation is the week of February 16th, and the week of April vacation is the week of April 20th, and that's why in red,
If I get my,
in red up there, you have
Anniversary
a
on it.
couple of weeks in between meetings.
This is fine,
Fairly,
we can change it.
fairly standard.
do we,
Yeah, I think that might not, I will point out once again that April 7th is probably our last meeting before town meeting.
are we, and
it's-
then the question is, do we put town meeting on our meeting schedule?
Well, I think the question is, are we done with the budget on April 7th? Because that,
Oh, that's a good
because
question. I mean,
we'll
there's
have
other
to-
dates.
We'll have to have the public presentation no later than March 24th on this schedule, so that we can incorporate any feedback from that, right? That gives us
The-
6 meetings.
There's so, I forget what the timeline is backing up for us to do a public hearing on our budget, the latest one. And then if you wanted other ones, then you gotta back up in time.
I would highly recommend that in early January, before the magical January 15th date, we might even have a workshop. We're gonna all get together, people can come in and talk the budget in detail.
Okay.
So,
What's Cherry Sheet Day? January 15th?
Oh, I don't know.
No, it's going to be later this year because
you
it's
got a new governor.
It's a new governor. So we may not, we probably won't see anything until February, right?
So my suggestion is that these meetings, we can approve these meetings.
Yeah.
With the contingency that other meetings are going to be put in here, because we really should, in the past, we've had, our town meeting has been put on here, that we actually have it, so that if we looked at a list, people know where we are, because we would
Well, I
be at
think
town meeting in the spring.
it's the last Monday in April, right?
The 27th, because vacation is the 20th, so it would be the 27th
Right.
of April.
The 27th, that's right. So it would hit before the 28th.
Yeah.
Which means we have to have our, so
But we
similar
have
to
voted
this
the
year-
budget at town meeting. I would not suggest we do that.
I don't want to do that. I
we
know.
have.
I know, and I know some boards think that's appropriate, but I think that defeats the entire purpose of having a public meeting. We're supposed to be here on television telling people what we think, not huddled in a room at the senior center taking a quiet vote.
The other piece, though, is many times when we have a public hearing, basically it's a done deal. All we're doing is just presenting all the numbers. And I think that part of the discussion at the conference was to have at least one public hearing where people had input into priorities and why do we have money here, there, and everywhere, for them to understand what it is and why. And if perchance there's something that someone brings something up, or if we're speaking to principals about needs in their respective schools, there may be a change that we would have in a budget because we're listening to what it is that the stakeholders are asking.
I think what happened, I think the one time, and it had to have been like 4 years ago, 3 years ago, that we actually voted before town meeting was because we were actually waiting for information to come back from the state. And then we got a number, and we actually, the only thing we did is we just confirmed, I think we just confirmed we had voted the previous meeting, just to make sure, because we really weren't, we didn't want to take a vote on something where we didn't know, what the final number was. 'Cause remember, this was during the whole
No, I agree, and
disaster that
sometimes
went
things
on.
like that arise.
Right.
But I think in the normal course of preparing a budget, I'm not comfortable with taking a final vote at
No,
town
you
meeting.
don't want to do
I
that.
think that's irresponsible.
That's not just that, it's just.
All right, so, we'll go ahead and pencil these in with the understanding that we may need to add a few more. Tuesdays are good days
Well,
for adding other ones?
Usually you just keep all Tuesdays open, because we may want another public session.
Right,
Or two
right.
in the next 5 months. Or 6 months. So that's not on there either.
Yeah.
But we've never done that.
Hard to imagine we wouldn't want one.
Well, we did promise a public session after the audit
Right,
results.
right.
Well, that'll be tri-board, right?
Yes, but I think
No,
that
at the
we
public
also should
forum.
have it, because, so that if other people want to ask questions, because there's not always at a tri-board meeting, public input or public questions. We've sat here and I've never seen at a tri-board meeting where the public says
Well,
anything.
I wonder why. Isn't it supposed to be an open meeting?
It's an open meeting, but you don't have to have public input. It
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
need it.
whoever's drawing up the agenda.
Right.
But I could imagine at a tri-board, if the point were to release the report, what are people going to say before the report gets released? I hear what you're saying, that we need to let them have a look at it and then hear what they have to say.
Right, so whatever
We said
the.
that at the last one, right? Someone asked.
We did say, and also, that was, some things were brought up last night at town meeting, at the fall town meeting, about they wanted the report and they wanted it mailed and all this other stuff. And I think that, without getting into that discussion, I think that if we have some kind of a time frame in December or early January, that if it becomes, because it will be a public document, because it's paid for with public funds.
Guys, we can add a meeting anytime we want.
No, I just want to
let's
just
get to the
have
point.
people take a look at making sure
Yeah.
that they understand that in December, January, we may be having an open session.
Well, that's okay. So, but we can still approve this tentatively, and we can add as many things
yeah,
as we
that's
want. We
what-
can add
that's
one a
fine.
month if we want.
Just to make sure that people that may actually be listening to the meeting, we are recognizing and listening to what it is that's also being requested.
Motion to approve the dates as listed on our handout, handy-dandy handout.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have field trip approvals, but no field trips in the packets. We have policy review, no policy for tonight.
But there'll be a lot next time.
Promise?
Oh, I promise.
All right. Liaison reports, the finance subcommittee. You have a meeting scheduled now for,
December 1st at
You won.
7:30.
okay. And so we'll hear back from you on the 4th. Policy, you're waiting to get some submissions, I take it?
There will be a dedicated session to policy review, unending, until we have a significant chunk of policy to present.
You talked about that with your collaborator there.
Al and I have
Yeah,
already
she
agreed.
told me what she's doing.
Al is holding
And Al-
himself so he
and
doesn't
Al
fall out of his
nodded.
seat.
Very good, very good.
And I took that to mean yes.
That's right. Not just dozing. All right, maintenance. Still, the next thing up is scheduled for the 3rd.
Yep.
Oh, wait a minute. That's right. We have to change that date. I'm sorry. I'm going to be in Washington, the 3rd and the 4th.
Okay.
I apologize, but
Okay. No, that's, you know what? That's why
Today.
we're trying to keep these live.
Okay.
I have moved some things off of the action item list into the maintenance list. The classroom temperatures and the just kind of general
well, that's on my list.
climate control, the pod conditions.
On my list.
And just getting a look at it. And Al and I discussed, I had a request some time ago, an inquiry, I guess, about the sign at the PAC.
Yeah. I
And-
talked to Gary briefly last night.
And Gary's ready to do something. I think
Yeah.
he just needs a little bit of guidance.
Right.
But Al's up to speed.
I want to talk to Carl and get some feedback from him,
Yeah.
and I think we can move pretty quickly.
Capital Planning Committee. Have you guys had a meeting yet?
Yep.
Would you like to tell us about it?
Sure. Meeting went well. Anne Marie presented the technology and security portion of the capital budget. Everyone seemed very receptive to, to what the plan was. I think the cemetery department also had their section, and there was town library did theirs, town technology did theirs. So our next meeting is, we have a meeting every Friday at 7:30 in the morning for the next
Right.
4 weeks, 4 weeks.
And you're presenting, when's the school?
School is the last one.
I think it's December
It always
4th.
is, right.
Or 5th.
It always is.
What?
It's the last one, and then after that, then we...
Right, December 4th?
No, it's the 5th.
Yes.
Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let me double check that. 5th, right? Trying to get the calendar here.
Here. Oops. Wrong.
Yeah, it's the 5th.
Okay.
Yep, the 5th, 12th. This weekend, this Friday. Yeah, we're not on the 28th. So,
Okay.
but, and what's gonna happen is, so the school would present its portion on the 5th, and then we have our major discussion and a vote on the 12th.
On the 12th. Okay.
And I think what we're gonna say, there'll be some finagling, and I'll come back, whenever we meet, I'll come back and with an update on
Right.
what's going on, and before, obviously, if you guys just trust me to make sure that these are the items that we want, and I'm not gonna try to give away the store, we don't have many items on the list anyway.
Right,
so.
it's the high school bathrooms.
The bathrooms, I can give them to you in a second.
It's the roof of this building.
Right, the roof here, not many items.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody needs any more showers in this building. Roof replacement, the server room gets the HVAC
Yeah.
unit. And that's it.
Yeah, okay.
That's all we have. But the school renovation, the high school renovation plumbing is, that one job alone is $815,000. So, we're gonna go through, I think the committee is still gonna, we didn't talk about it, but no one brought it up, so I suspect that the committee wants to go in with its 3-1 number, which is the number we were at last year. So, we have to trim off
Yeah.
a little bit off the
Something.
number that exists. The one thing that I highly recommend that once this exercise is done, I think the subcommittee should meet, the capital subcommittee should meet with the administration and maybe even with the principals of each school together in a meeting some morning early, and we just go over, because there are items for the next 2 years, the school quote-unquote requirements are huge.
Right.
I mean, they totally blow the capital budget away.
Is there anything at the Westlands
Yes.
in the next couple of years?
Yes. Remember, this is all
Just-
tentative, so none of this
yeah.
is cast in stone. And to answer your question, there are upgrades for the cafeterias throughout, I won't say all the schools, but there is a bunch of them in there to a tune of close to $1 million as a
Well,
request
that's
from now until.
actually, that sounds about right.
But that's from now until
Yeah.
FY 2020. So, well, but there's tons of projects on here. I mean, that's the thing. I mean,
All right, well,
I'll answer your question on Westlands.
No, it's okay, we can go over it
Westlands,
later.
there's one project for, Westlands, one project for FY 17, for a gym upgrade for $82,000. I don't know if that can come out of their, can that come out of the revolving account? Upgrade of the gymnasium?
The childcare using
Yeah.
the gymnasium quite a bit, are they?
I don't know. Yeah.
Are they?
That's who else uses
so.
it. I don't think they use it anywhere.
Fine. It's either them or CYBL.
I don't know if
I know,
CYBL
that-
uses, I don't think it
I'm
uses
teasing
Westlands at all.
CYBL, they're not over there.
The pre-K program.
Right.
If somebody else uses it, you just figure it out on a percentage basis of use.
Right.
Simple.
Yeah, but I don't think they do. That's not one of the locations.
Community ed uses it.
And the other thing is way out in 2018,
right.
is the plumbing for,
That building.
Okay,
Below
for
the
that
Westlands.
building.
right,
All right,
so.
well, hopefully we'll have a new list by then.
Well, that's what I mean. So, once it's done, I think it would be a good idea to just get together and reprioritize some of the things. I mean, like one of the things that was on the list, and I know I've heard this from many folks, I know Catherine Chamberlain made me promise. She actually came to me and she made me promise. I told her I'd make sure we kept it on the forefront is the refurbishing the auditorium over at McCarthy.
Yeah, that,
Because it's a great
that
asset.
floor
It's not just the
needs
floor,
some work.
it's not just the floor, it's everything. That's a big refurbishment job, so.
right.
And as you folks know, the principals have compiled their list
Right.
into the building walk, so
Right.
we have some very up-to-date
Right.
information directly from them.
Yeah, so I think it's important because what people like to do, especially I know people on the committee, and I've been working with them for the last few years, is they like to not just look at FY 16, but they like to look at 17 and 18 and say, well, if we're gonna do this, then what's this, and why are we doing this, and boy, isn't there a lot more, so,
Yeah.
want to be able to at least, going forward, at least give them something more concrete to look at, something that makes sense. But I'll update
just-
you again.
All right, thank you.
If
Yeah.
we move off the December 3rd date for the maintenance meeting, I'm going to be away the 8th, 9th, and 10th. Just so,
I'll
you
send
don't
out
have to
to you.
stop everything, but just so you know.
I'll send out an email to you gentlemen, and we'll reschedule that.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I just got a confirmation from a client today, and I have to be down there during influence.
All right, superintendent goals, Barbara and Nick, you guys need to talk to the superintendent about
Yeah.
setting some goals. I know you had thought in particular about some short-range objectives as part of the that fit in with the evaluation process. Yeah, so,
Yeah, if Dr. Tiano can just rough draft some of your thoughts.
Sure.
And then we can build off of that and add to what we need to add from our side. And then
Yeah, no, we'll go through the
Barbara and I can
process.
just throw some ideas back and forth.
Yeah.
I have one other thing. MASC has requested that the various school committees consider designating them as one of the representatives for the committees in arbitration cases. You can go look this up on their website. There's a legislative update. what they're trying to do is their point is that they're that the school committees are at a competitive disadvantage when the AFT or the MTA participate in an arbitration. They collect all of the arbitration rulings, and so they have a body of work to kind of benchmark against, right? That is far greater than what any single committee might amass on their own. So MASC thinks that they can be designated as one of the representatives of the various school committees, and that will give them the ability to amass their own collection of arbitration rulings. So this would take a vote by the committee. I'll put it in front of you tonight, ask you to go take a look at it, read the update on their website, think about it, and we'll consider it at the next meeting. Okay, action items. The number one action item I have is the activity account audit. So that did come through on the the check came through voided in the warrants that were signed this last week. And you think we'll see, or the money will be transferred as is appropriate in the next few weeks?
See no reason why that shouldn't happen. The
Okay.
check for the $6,000 was authorized by the school committee this
Right.
week to be distributed on Friday, and I will look into that $70 fee.
Yeah,
Take
for the
whatever
various
action is
accounts.
necessary.
The athletic activity accounts, we have discussed that the audit was done, and Mr. Moreau has lists of what's been raised, what's been spent, and what it's been spent on. And the item I had was
Hold
to be posted,
Thank you.
right? So I'm unaware of it having been posted yet, but I did not check the website today.
It's not posted.
Not posted.
Okay, all right, so that stays. The warrant handbook,
Wait,
sorry,
Who's taking the action item to post it?
it's a good question.
I will.
I will sign it to
Gotta
the
be transferred.
superintendent.
If you have the documents, got to be transferred over. It's easy enough put
We had
Excel
talked
spreadsheet,
about,
I saw it.
we talked about having a handbook or some sort of written documentation of the procedure for signing a warrant. That's for me and Mr. Antonelli to put together. At the last meeting, we did note that all members should individually sit and go through that, and I believe that has occurred at this point, right? Everybody's at least sat and talked with you about it,
Yes.
what would be appropriate. So it's just left for me to get with you and write something down so that the next generation has something to refer to. The updated FY15 budget, I think that's ongoing. I have it assigned to the superintendent and the consultant, and I think that's in pretty good shape, I feel like. Anybody got specific
No,
requests?
Can we get an update from John when he thinks he'll be complete on his second portion of his, just a rough idea when he might be done?
I'll email him.
I mean, he has a fixed price on, so I'm sure he doesn't want to be here forever.
Capacity of revolving funds is also ongoing, especially looking at childcare. We've seen evidence that work is progressing there tonight. What do you think? Should that stay as an action item? Should that get moved to the, you want to keep it? Okay.
Just so it's always in the
Fine.
forefront so that we
Okay.
don't forget. Not that we-
Checking retirement trends and our maximum exposure. I have that assigned to Darlene, which seems like an odd assignment for us, but has anybody reached out to her?
I've not reached out to her in terms of trends and trying to predict the future. Like, we have a ballpark of retirees right now.
Yeah.
And we've looked back in terms of trending, but not trying
Yeah.
to predict the future. It's difficult because
I think it's going to be really
you
hard.
may
to
have
do.
folks by age who may be approaching retirement age,
Doesn't
however,
mean they're gonna-
may be a second career person. You may have started teaching and
Right. What would the committee like to see on this item? I mean, I think the intent was to kind of gauge our possible exposure.
Right.
Are you willing to accept it as part of just the FY16 budget building process? That's one of the things that would be expected to be presented? Sure. And that number would be justified? Because if that's the case, then I'll take it off of the action item list, because we know there's an FY16 budget coming. If people are comfortable with that, then.
Well, I think it's a line that's in every budget as we go forward.
Right.
And I think this year, I don't think you need it on there. I think that we just take that, and as we're asking the questions, that's one of those things that we
All right.
take a look at.
But we have taken that administratively and working with our HR department to figure out what would be a good, predictable, consistent way of
Right.
going forward.
The presentation of substitute usage, looking by school, by day, by class, it was class meaning long-term illness, maternity leave, that sort of thing.
Meeting? Is that what it is? I don't think we talked about it here.
I think
We talked about it here.
we talked about it here. I think Ken was
He's compiled some
Ken
of that
had
information.
ownership of it at the
Yep.
last meeting. We had a request at the last meeting for a breakdown of numbers of IEP students by classroom. We also have an ongoing request for a breakdown of the number of IEP students by identification, so that we can build a report similar to Lexington. Acton-Boxborough, and once that report gets built, then that'll generate another action item to support their request
There's also
or their
Yeah,
initiative.
I think, yeah, their initiative, let's say their initiative.
So by disability?
By identification, right?
Yeah,
So-
well, yeah, by
Brad
category.
is on this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I know he is. I'm just, for my,
Right.
The other thing would be to, instead of just an IEP, you would want services. Because some students do not have IEPs, but they do receive maybe other services. There may be speech that's in there, there may be something else.
Okay, the report.
no,
that-
it could be on a 504 basis.
Oh,
Yeah.
504.
Or on a regular education basis, like articulation for speech
Right,
as an example.
right, that the teacher noticed something and, so much is going over here, so that we have an idea of the other service aspect of this.
All right, so if we start with the category identifications, then that'll allow us to build the report that AB did, and we can move from there. I think you may very well be right that there are other significant categories that need to be looked at. We had also added questions asked by Regina Jackson at the open input session. I've broken those out at this point. She asked us to identify savings from the local special education transportation switch of providers. She had asked us to identify savings from, my notes say lunch ladies, which I believe is the food service reorganization that was
Preferred foods.
FY08?
Yes, it was done quite a while ago.
08?
Yeah, because Bob
Yeah.
Cruikshank was still here, and so was Dr. Moser.
She asked us to identify savings from the outsourcing of custodians, and she asked for a breakdown of the fees and how they are spent. I believe the first three items are fairly straightforward, and I will assign them to myself. I believe I can break those out given the numbers that were provided by the auditor. I will bring them back for people to review and discuss before I send them out, but I think I can do that. The breakdown of fees and how they're spent is a little bit more wide-ranging question.
Fees as in,
Like all the fees we take
Busing,
in, and
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are simple. Some of them, I don't know. This is something that Al's been leading the charge on for years. Really, we need to get a handle on how much we're charging our parents, and where that money's going. I mean, transportation, okay, it comes in, it goes out. Athletics, maybe it's a little bit more complicated. I guess it depends on the level of detail that you want. right? We know the fees come in, you could just say they all get spent on the athletic department.
Well, as
That
they
would
do,
be,
as
that
long
would,
as they
that
do.
would be true. Well, yeah, so I think that would be an accurate statement.
I mean,
But
there
you
are-
might ask for a further breakdown, how much gets spent on coaches, how much gets spent on transportation. I mean, and
They have
that's
that.
a,
I think they have that in detail somewhere. I remember seeing that somewhere because I remember seeing some. I remember looking at a report that, again, a large majority is coaches, referees, officials, and site, whatever the hell they call them.
Supervision.
Thank you.
I think honestly, the first thing is to figure out how many different fees
Yeah.
we charge.
Exactly. Each sport varies.
But not just the sports. I mean, there's the
Clubs,
sports, there's
music.
clubs, there's transportation, there's,
Yep, parking.
So maybe what we do is we just have a report that's just on the fees and then how they are, well, I'm just repeating what you said and how they're spent.
who
Where do they
would like
go?
to take ownership of that item?
Last year, I worked with our administrative team to collect what we thought were all of the fees,
Okay.
because this question had come up previously.
There should be other
Okay,
data on another
then I'm
file
giving it
somewhere.
to you. So I'd like to, I think I'd like to see that report.
It was more of a listing.
Okay.
You know, in
You know
terms
what?
of everything
I would
Yeah.
start with a list.
Okay.
We also added the questions that Claire Janot provided. I'm going to go through those fairly quickly, too. Why were late warrants signed by school committee members? I think we have largely answered that question. I will talk to Claire about if she wants this written down, but I think
we should write. I think we should respond in writing.
Okay.
So if other people want to see those answers, that they're available.
That's fine. What do you guys want to do? You want to email me some kind of...
Sure.
If everybody emails me their own answer to it, we can put it together. I think we have talked about how we've gone through the process and what we've done in terms of trying to make sure that it doesn't happen again. That's people talking to Frank, that's people talking to Darlene, that we do have some written things in place. We're going to put more written things in place. I think we can answer that question. And yeah, if we just, my intent by adding these things to the action item list was to start to break them down, and let's get the things that we can answer answered.
People send us the questions.
I'll send you the questions. A corollary to that was why were late bills paid by the town accountant? I am going to say that that is not our purview, and I can't answer that. When did the superintendent know FY14 was overrun, and when was the school committee informed? Some of these questions, I think, run into an ongoing investigation.
Well, you could write it down. You just don't have. You can take note on what you want to do, but you're just not gonna.
So I'm going to send these questions out, and maybe everybody can at least answer their own, give
Well, you
their
can
own
see
answer
where
about when they
we're coming
found, when and how they learned about it. Okay? Unpaid bills included lunch invoices. Where were the bills? We had that answered tonight, I think. Another question in that line was who evaluates the food service director? Is the food service director, does she get an evaluation the way that a principal gets an evaluation or a
Not
coordinator?
Not in the same way. April, you don't hold a DESE license? Okay, so it's not subject to the teacher evaluation tool like
She will be
these folks there.
She would be
But would-
evaluated on the business.
And she's
What would fall
she's
on-
a direct report to the business manager.
But she's a direct report to the business manager.
Okay.
Question was similar
Yep.
to.
Are those evaluations that are done, are they, can we see what they look like, or is that in a personnel file where it's private?
That would be in a personnel file.
Why, no.
I mean,
that's what it would be, but I
in
mean-
terms of access, yeah,
Right,
is my
but
understanding.
is that something that
Yeah,
the
they don't-
committee can look at?
I
No,
don't believe so.
Okay, just thought I'd
they,
ask.
you know what, DESE just released the aggregated data for educator evaluations for last year. And, so you can go break it down by teachers, you can break it down by teachers with and without, professional status, you can break it down by administrators, I think you can break it down by principals, but in fact, for us, not the principals. Maybe the administrator. The administrators show no data for us because there's only 6 of them that got a report. And if you look at the DESI website, there's a couple of categories where they just don't release the numbers at all, and it's not quite specific. So I mean that's I think the only level of public information that you can get out of the various educator evaluations. You can go digging through the DESI website and see what you can see, but I don't think there's any other thing there's nothing else that gets released. The special education director came from the collaborative. Why were the special education bills a surprise? And there I use Ms. Janot's terminology. I think that probably falls into the investigation category. The superintendent voted on how the collaborative did its billing. Why were the bills a surprise? Once again. She had a question about the interim business manager not being voted. She noted later that she accepts that the designation of consultant is a legal answer, but still suggested that we have a vote of approval. Now that people have had an opportunity to work with Mr. Antonelli, would anyone like to make a motion supporting?
Make a motion supporting the selection of Frank Antonelli as our business consultant.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Quite warmly.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your support.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Now you'll get paid. The final question, she said, a 4-person business office seems light. Who assesses this office? Does the superintendent evaluate the business manager? I think that's 2 questions. So,
Would Mr. Antonelli agree with that
That
statement?
it is light, yes, I would definitely agree with that. I believe that you need a person that can fill in for your payroll person as well as your accounts payable person. It may be one position. That person could do both of those jobs.
with
but-
some cross-training.
Exactly. No doubt about it. And the perfect example of why you need that is based on the last 3 or 4 weeks when you had an employee out. And this past fall, I believe, or fall, or maybe the previous year, you had a person out in the business office on leave. You need someone to be able to jump right in there and help out.
And that is my list of action items. I have one addition from tonight, and that is the expectation that monthly reports would involve would cover the general fund, grants, revolving accounts, and the and the condition of student activity accounts.
And encumbrances, right? Does that fall under general?
The encumbrances would be included in all of those
Okay.
reports.
Okay. Anything else that people had for action items tonight? Okay. Are there any press questions? Oh, she snuck out. I was so close. All right. In that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Our next scheduled meeting is the regular session on Tuesday,
Frank, have a seat.
December 2nd.
Keep us posted.